Try as one might, it's pretty hard to escape the gravitational field of news from PJM and ERCOT. They seem to be where tomorrow's power grid is being shaped these days. It's not that other markets don't matter, but the fault lines between data center-driven demand and supply are most evident in these two markets, and the resulting regulatory responses have repercussions that will extend well beyond those two markets into the rest of North America. Plus, together, those two grid operators serve close to 30% of U.S. GDP. Today, we'll discuss the capacity auction results for PJM's 2028-29 delivery year. That goes from June 1st to May 31st. The results were, in a word, consistent, which means there were no huge surprises. Once again, the price hit the $325 per megawatt day cap administratively approved by FERC. And once again, the desired quantities of capacity fell short of the amount deemed necessary to meet PJM's planned reserve margin of 20%. So let's get into the numbers and discuss what they mean and why they matter. First, the amount of capacity that cleared the auction. That was 149,181 megawatts. Second, that amount was 6,831 megawatts below what PJM calculates as necessary to meet its desired 20% reserve margin that can ensure grid reliability under worst-case conditions. And that shortfall increased from last year's 6,516 megawatts. More on that later. Third, the total level of new supply, including uprates of existing generation, where they increased the ability of existing assets to generate more power, that was just under 525 megawatts. So not very impressive in the new supply category. And fourth, and the number everybody pays attention to, that auction price cleared at the $325 per megawatt day cap. That's the third auction in a row in which that has occurred since that cap's been in place. There's one more year to go. One last number to focus on. PJM ran a simulated auction absent the price collar, the floor sits at 175 and the cap at 325, and found that in all markets except the Chicago area, the price would have cleared without the cap at close to $555 per megawatt day. The Chicago area served by Commonwealth Edison, that would have been even further pummeled at almost $777 per megawatt day. Putting those numbers in perspective, from 2022 to 2025, before the massive data center forecasted loads entered the picture, the clearing prices averaged or ranged from $28.92 to around $50 per megawatt day. That alone pretty well explains why the recent prices from data center loads are such a political hot potato and a lightning rod for opponents who fear price and rate increases resulting from the new data load. They're right to do so. Per an email to Utility Dive from Joseph Bowring, the head of the independent market monitor, in this latest auction, data center actual and forecasted loads increased costs by $6.3 billion, with a total now of $29.4 billion over the past four capacity auctions, representing 46% of total capacity-related charges. The analysis from the independent market monitor will be published shortly, but what this means is that all these other loads are now paying for these new large load entrants, which are driving up the cost for everybody. So now that we have the numbers, what do these results portend for our electric energy future? Well, let's start with that fact that not enough supply attendees showed up at the party. PJM sets its desired reserve margin at 20%, based on what they estimate is necessary to meet the one event in 10-year reliability standard. So they hold 20% of extra generating capacity over what they think they need for those worst-case scenarios. The grid operator arrives at that number by simulating thousands of scenarios across seasons, look at demand, the likelihood of unplanned generator outages, and determining how much power they can import from neighboring grids. In this auction, then, they fell 6,500 megawatts short, leaving them at just under a 15% reserve margin. The caps, while they create relief for ratepayers, they also create the supplier problem as well because they're under market. So if anybody investing capital wants to seek a decent rate of return, they're going to go someplace else outside of PJM. Predictably, politicians who argued for the caps celebrated how much they'd saved their constituents, and they didn't generally focus on the shortfall. And just as predictably, energy economists and planners, including PJM, noted that this type of market intervention with collars will increase future supply shortfalls. In its summary document, PJM noted that, quote, a price cap, ... can reduce the amount of investment and therefore supply in the PJM region. And this is something they've been focusing on in their white paper as well. So personally, I wasn't surprised that almost no new generation came to the 2028-2029 auction with liquor and gifts for two reasons. First, there's that potentially more attractive reliability backstop procurement auction planned for September in PJM, in which generators can establish bilateral contracts with large loads, with delivery also starting in 2028-29. And the backstop auction offers both a far longer term with contracts from 2 to 15 years and a potentially higher price. Then there's the fact that PJM's recent white paper in May, which is worth a read. It essentially says the current approach to capacity planning is no longer working, so we won't get the resource adequacy we need, and new approaches should be considered. That white paper also noted that the cost of developing a new gas-fired combined cycle reference plan is much higher than the estimated cost of new entries, also close to that $555 per megawatt day price. And this is because of recent supply chain issues and a significant demand-supply imbalance in new turbines. GE, Mitsubishi, Siemens, they're essentially sold out through the end of the decade with orders well above existing factory production limits. Lazard's just released Levelized Cost of Energy report, where it looks at the all-in cost to generate of electricity, indicate that a megawatt hour from a gas-fired generator has increased in cost every year since 2019, with the 2025 to 2026 price increase soaring by 15% in just a single year, and up 50% over the past 5 years. So again, with a price capped at $325 per megawatt day, the shortfall should come as no surprise. We'll likely see more of the same for the 2029-2030 auction in December. What did surprise me was the anemic amount of demand response and distributed energy resources that cleared the auction process. PJM noted this was the first year that aggregated DERs under FERC Order 2222 were eligible to participate. You might remember 2222 basically directs grid operators to treat aggregations of DERs over 100 kilowatts like any other wholesale asset, but none showed up. And at the same time, the total demand response number declined from 7,299 megawatts last year to 7,017 this year. I'm at a loss to explain this one, so perhaps someone watching this video can clue me in. I would have thought these higher prices in recent years would have elicited a bumper crop of DR and DERs, rather than the meager harvest we've been seeing. These supply shortfalls weren't lost on FERC Chair Laura Sweat, who commented this was the second year with a shortfall, compounding the, quote, alarm bell. FERC has scheduled a technical conference on July 23rd to address these issues, but don't expect any magic bullets. These problems are thorny, difficult to solve, and involve billions of dollars in winners and losers. So it'll be really interesting to see how this unfolds, but it'll be guaranteed it'll be ugly. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.